Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive curated just for you into the philosophy of, well, a pretty big name, Martin Heidegger. I mean, he's considered one of the, I guess you could say, most influential, but also like controversial thinkers of the entire 20th century. So today we're going to be kind of exploring excerpts from this book written in Spanish that focuses on his thought. And it's, like our attempt to really unpack the core ideas of Heidegger, his critique of traditional metaphysics, and then, see how those ideas kind of ripple outward into how we think about just everything, existence, truth, art, even technology in our modern world.
Yeah, I mean, Heidegger's a fascinating figure because he really does stand at this crossroads in the history of philosophy. He's trying to grapple with this whole legacy of thinkers like Plato all the way through Nietzsche. And he's doing this really interesting thing where he's both like fulfilling and dismantling their ideas.
So right off the bat, it sounds like we're dealing with a thinker who, he really doesn't shy away from complexity at all. What I find super interesting is this idea that Heidegger's central project is all about questioning being. Yeah, isn't that something we rarely even stop to think about in our everyday lives? We just are, right?
That's exactly the point Heidegger wants to challenge. He's really pushing us to go beyond just simply accepting our existence and ask this deeper question, like, what does it mean to be? And so he makes this really important distinction between being with a capital B, this is like the very condition that allows things to exist at all, and then beings. Those are the individual entities, the stuff that we encounter in the world.
So it's not just the stuff, but like the underlying structure that allows for stuff to exist in the first place.
Precisely. And so this is where his concept of Dasein comes in. It's a German word that translates to being there, which, it might sound a bit strange, but it really does capture this very unique way that humans exist in the world. We're not just objects. We're beings who can actually step back and question our own being.
That's where things start to get really, really interesting for me. So if I'm understanding this correctly, Heidegger is saying that we can't just think our way to an understanding of being, but rather we need to kind of engage in a deeper kind of reflection, almost like an experience of being.
You're at the right track. Heidegger felt that traditional logic and metaphysics just weren't adequate for really grasping the essence of being. And so he turned to phenomenology, which really prioritizes lived experience, and hermeneutics, which is, the art of interpretation.
Okay, so this is a lot to unpack, but I'm starting to see how radical Heidegger's approach really is.
Yeah.
He's kind of shifting this focus from what things are to, how do they exist, right?
Yeah, exactly. He emphasizes this temporal and finite nature of human existence, which is a real departure from that traditional emphasis on substance. So for Heidegger, we're not defined by this unchanging essence, but by our existence within time, by the fact that we are constantly becoming, changing, moving toward
death. This is where I kind of struggle with Heidegger a little bit. This whole idea of being towards death, I don't know, it seems a little bit morbid, doesn't it? How does confronting our mortality help us understand existence better?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive, but Heidegger actually saw death not just as the end, but as this defining possibility that shapes our entire existence. So by acknowledging our finitude, our limited time, we actually become more aware of the choices we make and the meaning that we create.
So death isn't just an event that happens at the end. It's like a force that's shaping our lives right now. That's a pretty powerful idea.
And it really leads into how Heidegger reinterprets time itself. He didn't see it as this, linear progression from past to present to future, but as this complex interplay of past, present, and future, all grounded in the reality of our finite existence.
Okay, so we've explored being, existence, this, fascinating, although somewhat daunting concept of time. But how does truth fit into all of this?
Well, Heidegger had this really radical view of truth. For him, it wasn't about these static facts or, correspondence to reality. But he saw truth as aletheia, a Greek term meaning unconcealment.
So instead of truth being something fixed and objective, it's more like a process of revealing and concealing.
Precisely. And he uses Plato's allegory of the cave to kind of illustrate this, but he reinterprets it to emphasize this interplay of light and shadow. So truth isn't something that we possess, it's something that emerges, that shows itself to us in this particular way.
That really challenges our typical understanding of truth. Can you give me a concrete example of what this unconcealment might look like in our everyday lives?
Well, think about a moment when you suddenly understood something that you had been struggling with, like maybe an idea in a book or a problem you were trying to solve. That moment of insight, that aha experience, that's a kind of unconcealment. It's not that the truth wasn't there before, it just wasn't revealed to you in that particular way.
So truth is about perspective, about the way things appear to us.
In a way, yes. Heidegger believed that truth is actually grounded in the very process of being. The
Yeah.
way things reveal themselves to us is actually part of what makes them true.
This is really making me rethink my whole understanding of truth. But I'm still a bit fuzzy on how this all connects to art. I know Heidegger had some pretty strong opinions about the role of art in revealing being.
Yeah, for Heidegger, art played this crucial role in unconcealing the truth of being. He believed that art actually makes that interplay of revealing and concealing, that dance between what's present and what's hidden. It makes it visible to us in this very unique way.
So in a sense, art gives us access to a dimension of reality that we might otherwise miss.
He thought so. He analyzed, for example, Van Gogh's painting of peasant shoes. And he saw in it this revelation of the peasant's world, their connection to the earth, and the very essence of being embodied in those, simple shoes.
And I remember reading about his analysis of a Greek temple, too, where he saw it as this site where the human and the divine, the earthly and the eternal kind of came together.
Exactly. But, this approach to art, it wasn't without its critics. Some argue that Heidegger's view was overly romanticized, potentially ignoring the social and historical context of artistic creation.
So we have this view of art as a really powerful force for revealing being, but it's a contested view. Where does technology fit into all of this?
This is where things get really interesting and perhaps a bit unsettling. Heidegger saw modern technology as the culmination of the very metaphysical tradition he was critiquing.
Okay, so help me understand this. How can technology be both a product of metaphysics and a threat to the understanding of being?
Well, for Heidegger, technology was all about turning everything into a resource to be exploited and controlled. It reduces the world to this, what he called standing reserve, just a collection of things to be used. And it's a way of thinking that obscures the mystery of being, the way that things reveal themselves in their own time and manner.
So instead of art, which allows being to unconceal itself, technology forces being into these predefined categories and uses.
You're getting to the heart of Heidegger's critique. He called this process enframing, where technology kind of imposes this particular way of seeing and ordering the world, a way that ultimately obscures the truth of being.
Okay, this enframing idea, can you give me a real-world example of this so I can kind of wrap my head around it?
Well, think about how we interact with nature through technology. Instead of experiencing a forest as this place of, wonder and mystery, we might see it primarily as a source of timber or a potential site for development. This calculative utilitarian perspective, that's a manifestation of enframing.
I see what you mean. It's like we're losing our ability to just be present with things, to appreciate them for what they are, because we're constantly thinking about how we can use them, how we can control them.
That's a great way to put it. And this is the challenge that Heidegger leaves us with. Can we find a way to relate to the world, to being, that isn't dominated by this technological enframing?
That's a big question, and one that I'm not sure I have an answer to. But I'm eager to delve a little deeper into Heidegger's thinking to see what possibilities he might offer.
I think that's the right approach. Heidegger's work is challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding. He forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our relationship to the world. But in doing so, he opens up these new ways of thinking and being, these new possibilities for living a more authentic and meaningful life.
And speaking of new ways of thinking and being, I'm really intrigued by this idea of language as the house of being. You mentioned that earlier. It seems like a really crucial part of Heidegger's later work. What exactly did he mean by that?
Yeah, it's a really powerful idea, this notion of language as the house of being. Basically suggesting that language isn't this tool for communication, but the very medium through which being reveals itself. So it's through language that we encounter the world, we make sense of our experience, we come to understand what it means to be.
So for Heidegger, language isn't just describing reality. It's actually shaping our understanding of reality. And it's fascinating how he connects this to his critique of technology. Could it be that technology's dominance stems from this deeper issue, like the way we've come to use language to think about the world?
You're hitting on a crucial point there. Heidegger believed that this technological mindset, this drive to control and dominate nature, it really has its roots in a certain way of thinking, a way of using language that's become increasingly abstract and detached from the lived experience of being.
It's like we've lost touch with that poetry of existence, the mystery and wonder that lies at the heart of things. Speaking of poetry, I know Heidegger was particularly drawn to the work of the poet Hölderlin. What was it about Hölderlin's poetry that resonated so deeply with him?
Well, Heidegger saw in Hölderlin a poet who was just just deeply attuned to the truth of being, a poet who could speak the language of the earth, the sky, the mortals, and the divinities. And he often quoted this line from Hölderlin's Hyperion, "Poetically, man dwells on this earth." And it really captures this idea that poetry is a way of dwelling, of being in the world. That's very different from this calculative technological mode.
So it's not just about reading poetry. It's about embodying that poetic sensibility, that attentiveness to the thing itself in the way we live our lives. I'm starting to see how this connects to Heidegger's concept of the fourfold, which we've touched on earlier. Mm-hmm. Could you unpack that a bit more for me? I'm still struggling to understand how these four elements, earth, sky, mortals, divinities, how they come together to reveal the truth of being.
Yeah, the fourfold is really a way of understanding the interconnectedness of all things, a way of seeing the world as this unified whole rather than a collection of, separate parts. And so each element represents this different dimension of being, and it's through their interplay that the truth of being is revealed.
Okay, so let's break it down. You mentioned that Earth represents the material world, kind of like the physical ground of our existence. Mm-hmm. What about sky? How does that fit into the equation?
Well, sky represents openness, limitlessness, the realm of possibilities. It's the space where we encounter the vastness of the cosmos and the mystery of the unknown. And so Heidegger saw the sky as a symbol of transcendence, of something that lies beyond our grasp, something that inspires awe and wonder.
So we have the earth, which grounds us in the physical world, and the sky, which points us toward something beyond the material. And then there's mortals, which obviously refers to us humans. What makes our mode of being so special in Heidegger's view?
Well, for Heidegger, humans occupy this really unique position in the fourfold. We are the beings who can actually question being itself, who can reflect on our own existence and our place in the world. We're like this bridge between earth and sky, the meeting point of the finite and the infinite.
I love that image of humans as a bridge between earth and sky. It really captures that duality of our existence, our groundedness in the material world and our yearning for something more. But what about divinities? Does this mean Heidegger believed in traditional gods and goddesses?
Not exactly. For Heidegger, divinities represent this realm of the sacred, like the spiritual dimension of existence. They embody the forces that inspire awe and wonder, the mysteries that lie beyond our rational understanding.
So it's not about specific deities, but about recognizing a dimension of reality that transcends the purely material, the purely rational. I'm starting to see how this fourfold concept provides a framework for understanding our place in the world, our relationship to being. But how do we actually live out this understanding? How do we dwell authentically in the world as Heidegger urged us to do?
Yeah, that's a question Heidegger grappled with throughout his life, and it's one that each of us has to answer for ourselves. He didn't offer a set of, rules or guidelines for authentic dwelling, but he pointed us towards certain practices, certain ways of being that can help us to open ourselves to the truth of being.
So it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state of dwelling.
Yeah.
But about cultivating a certain awareness, a certain attentiveness to the world around us.
Precisely. Heidegger believed that authentic dwelling involves this deep attentiveness to the things around us, a willingness to let them reveal themselves to us in their own time and manner. And it also involves this recognition of our interconnectedness with all things, a sense of belonging to the earth and to the cosmos.
That resonates with me deeply. I think we often go through life on autopilot, kind of taking things for granted, not really seeing the world around us. And Heidegger's call to dwell authentically is a reminder to slow down, to pay attention, to appreciate the beauty and wonder that's all around us, even in the most ordinary things.
You've captured the essence of it. Authentic dwelling is about cultivating a sense of wonder and gratitude, a recognition of the mystery and the gift of existence. It's about living in a way that honors the earth, the sky, the mortals, and the divinities, recognizing that we are all part of this larger web of being.
It sounds like a beautiful and challenging way to live. But I'm wondering, is it even possible to dwell authentically in our modern world, a world that's dominated by technology and speed and constant distraction?
That's a question Heidegger himself grappled with. He was deeply concerned about the impact of technology on our ability to dwell authentically. He saw technology as a force that could potentially uproot us from our connection to the earth, to the thing itself, to the truth of being.
And he used the term enframing to describe this technological mindset, this way of seeing the world as a collection of resources to be exploited. It's a chilling term, and it makes me wonder if we're already so deeply entrenched in this technological way of being that there's no turning back.
Well, Heidegger believed that the danger of technology lies not so much in the machines themselves, but in the way of thinking that underlies them. It's a way of thinking that reduces everything to its functional use value, that prioritizes efficiency and control over wonder and mystery.
So it's not about rejecting technology altogether, but about becoming more aware of its influence on our thinking, on our way of being in the world. But is that even possible? We're surrounded by technology. It's woven into the very fabric of our lives. How can we possibly escape its grip?
Heidegger believed that the key to resisting that enframing power of technology lies in rediscovering the truth of being, in reawakening our sense of wonder and our connection to the world around us. And he saw art and poetry as potential pathways to this rediscovery, ways of, breaking free from the technological mindset and opening ourselves to a different way of seeing and being.
I can see how art and poetry can offer a counterpoint to the technological worldview. They invite us to slow down, to contemplate, to appreciate the beauty and complexity of the world in a way that technology often doesn't. But I'm still struggling to see how we can bridge the gap between these two seemingly opposed ways of being. Is there a way to integrate technology into our lives without succumbing to its enframing power?
That's a crucial question, and one that Heidegger himself didn't fully answer. He believed that the relationship between technology and being was a complex and evolving one, and that the future of technology remained an open question.
So it's up to us to figure out how to navigate this technological landscape in a way that preserves our connection to the truth of being, to the wonder and mystery of existence. It's a daunting but also exhilarating challenge. I'm starting to see how Heidegger's philosophy, despite its complexity and at times bleakness, can offer a sense of hope and possibility. It reminds us that we have a choice in how we relate to the world, to technology, to being itself.
That's a profound insight. Heidegger's philosophy isn't a set of answers.
Yeah.
But a call to question, to think differently, to imagine new possibilities. He challenges us to become more conscious of our own being, our own choices, and our own responsibility for shaping the world around us.
I'm starting to see how Heidegger's work can be not just intellectually stimulating, but also a guide for living a more meaningful and authentic life. But before we get too carried away with these grand ideas, I'm curious to bring things back down to earth a bit. You mentioned earlier that Heidegger's own life wasn't without controversy, particularly his involvement with the Nazi Party. How do we reconcile his profound philosophical insights with this troubling aspect of his biography?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and one that continues to haunt Heidegger's legacy. How can a philosopher who spoke so eloquently about being, about authenticity, about dwelling in the world, how could he align himself with such a horrific ideology?
There's no easy answer to that. And Heidegger himself never really fully accounted for his actions.
Right. Some scholars argue that his philosophy, with its emphasis on, rootedness and belonging, was particularly susceptible to nationalist interpretations.
I can see how his ideas could be distorted.
Yeah.
And used to justify, exclusionary ideologies. It's a stark reminder that even the most profound philosophical insights can be manipulated and used for harmful purposes.
Absolutely. And it really highlights the importance of engaging with philosophy critically, of being aware of its potential blind spots and its historical context. We can't just accept ideas at face value. We have to grapple with their implications, their potential for both good and evil.
So Heidegger's life kind of serves as this cautionary tale, reminding us that even the most brilliant minds can be fallible, that ideas have consequences, and that we have a responsibility to use our critical thinking skills to really discern the truth.
Precisely. Heidegger's philosophy offers us this really rich and complex tapestry of ideas, but it's up to us to weave those ideas into a meaningful and ethical way of life.
I appreciate that perspective. It's important to acknowledge the complexities and contradictions, both in Heidegger's life and in his work. But I'm curious, shifting gears a bit, can you elaborate on what Heidegger actually meant by dwelling? It's a concept that keeps coming up, but I'm still struggling to understand what it would look like to dwell authentically in the world today.
Right. It's a concept that goes beyond simply inhabiting a space. Heidegger contrasts dwelling with habitation, which he sees as a more superficial and often alienated way of being in the world.
So it's not just about having a roof over our heads, but about cultivating a deeper sense of connection to place, to the earth, to being itself.
Exactly. For Heidegger, dwelling authentically involves recognizing our interdependence with the world around us, understanding that we're not separate from nature, but part of a larger ecological web.
I'm starting to see how this connects to his critique of technology. Technology often encourages us to see the world as this collection of resources to be exploited, this standing reserve, just waiting to be used. It disconnects us from the natural rhythms of life, from the cyclical processes of growth and decay that are so essential to our existence.
You've hit on a key point there. Heidegger believed that modern technology, with its emphasis on speed and efficiency and control, could make authentic dwelling increasingly difficult.
Because it fosters this mindset of detachment, a sense that we are separate from and superior to the natural world.
That's part of it, but it's also about the way technology shapes our perception of time and space. Heidegger believed that technology often creates this sense of rootlessness, of being constantly on the move, never fully present in any one place or moment.
Yeah, we're always looking ahead, planning the next thing, scrolling through our phones, never fully inhabiting the space we're in or the moment we're experiencing.
Precisely. And this constant state of distraction can make it really difficult to cultivate the attentiveness, the presence, the sense of rootedness that Heidegger saw as so essential to authentic dwelling.
So it's not just about reducing our screen time or going off the grid. It's about cultivating a different way of being in the world, a way of being that's more grounded, more attentive, more in tune with the rhythms of nature.
Right. Heidegger believed that authentic dwelling requires this kind of mindfulness, a willingness to slow down, to pay attention to the things around us, to appreciate their unique qualities, their thingness, as he called it.
It's about resisting the urge to reduce everything to its functional use value, to see the world through this purely utilitarian lens.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of wonder, a recognition of the mystery and beauty that exists all around us, even in the most ordinary things.
It sounds like a challenging but also incredibly rewarding way to live. It makes me think about the importance of cultivating practices that help us to slow down, to become more present, to reconnect with the natural world, whether it's spending time in nature, meditating, or simply taking a few moments each day to appreciate the simple things. These practices can help us to cultivate a sense of dwelling, a sense of belonging in the world.
I think you've hit on something crucial there. It's about finding ways to counter the forces in our modern world that encourage us to live in this state of distraction and detachment. It's about reclaiming our capacity for wonder, for presence, for connection.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking deep dive into the world of Heidegger. His philosophy is complex and challenging, but it also offers this really profound invitation to rethink our relationship to the world, to technology, to being itself.
Heidegger's work reminds us that we're not just thinking beings, but also dwelling beings. We are creatures of the earth, and our existence is inextricably intertwined with the world around us.
And perhaps by rediscovering the truth of dwelling, we can find a path toward a more meaningful and sustainable way of life, a way of life that honors both ourselves and the world we inhabit. Well, thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of Heidegger's thought.